In the interview that I'm about to share with you, Cassie, a rock star real estate assistant in the San Francisco Bay Area, shares her experience transitioning into her role as a real estate assistant from another industry. She talks about her expectations versus the reality on the job, and she shares how she went from being a reactive assistant into a proactive office manager for a growing real estate team. Hi, I'm Vanessa Rosenblum, president of R.E.A Staffing. We are passionate about connecting talented administrative staff with growing real estate teams nationwide. If you're exploring a career as a real estate assistant, you must listen to this interview. This is exactly what you need to know about the role that you aspire to. If you're a real estate agent or broker, you should listen to this as well. I think the biggest takeaway for you will be an appreciation for the new hire learning curve and what you can do to support your new hire so that they can be successful for you. Let's get started. Hi, Cassie. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on a call to share your experience about transitioning into the role of a real estate assistant. So I thought we would start by just finding out what your typical day is like on the job. You're, a real estate assistant for a busy agent in the San Francisco Bay Area. What's that like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I guess the cliche answer would be that there is no typical day, especially in real estate, but I've made it my personal mission to try and create as much structure in my days as possible so that, the important things get done. And that starts with a morning routine, ideally before I even glance at the inbox, which, is the source of the rabbit hole. It's where productivity can easily go downhill. Yes. So I like to start my day by making a list of to-dos or goals, or by reviewing the list I left for myself the day before, ideally. And then I'll also take a look at the calendar just to see what's on my agent's schedule. I'll check my task list in Brivity for our active listings and pending sales. And once I've caught up, once I have an agenda for my day, then I will dive into my boss's email. And from there, the rest of my day is usually split up between projects like planning team meetings or fine-tuning drip campaigns, and then other tasks like client communication, listing management, and just supporting the team and responding to those emails. But I do think that morning routine is pretty crucial to setting the tone and focusing your day. So I try to live by that.
That's fantastic. And describe your team. How many people do you support?
Yeah, so actually our team has more than doubled in size since I joined a little over a year ago. We have now 2 buyer's agents in addition to my lead agent, Carrie. And we also recently added a showing specialist to kind of take all that car time and opening door time off the buyer's agent's plates so that they can spend more time writing offers and researching properties. So we're a team of 5, and part of my job is leading those weekly team meetings, bringing everyone together and fostering that culture. And, so that's a pretty recent development in my role from when we started out as just me and my agent. So I've really loved that aspect of the job. It's an area where I feel like my strengths really come out, and we have a great team. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I haven't met your buyer's agents, but you certainly have a great agent that you work for. I can vouch for that.
I do.
So tell me what you were doing before you got into real estate.
Sure. My background is actually in copywriting and journalism. I had a fair amount of marketing experience as well, writing for nonprofits and tech companies and small businesses. So yeah, I went to school for journalism, and but always kind of had this, nagging sort of interest in real estate as well.
And what caused you to take the plunge and apply for the job that you took with your current team?
Sure. I started out in real estate part-time. as an assistant, just to kind of dip my toe in and get a feel for it and see if it was something I was interested in pursuing full time. So I was an assistant to another agent for, maybe 15 hours a week or so, and learned a lot. And it really, I realized that you can constantly be learning in this industry, and there's so many different aspects. So whatever you love to do, there's something in real estate that can use your skills. And like I said, I had a lot of marketing experience. I was really interested in the business building aspect of the industry. And so doing that and also still freelancing full time, I realized, I love writing. It's my passion. I'd like to keep it that way and write only the things that I really want to, and give this a shot. Plus the tangibility of what we do in real estate was very appealing, especially to someone like me who is a writer and deals a lot in the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
You can see from beginning to end, you're helping people through this major life change, and then they get a home at the end. You put in time lead generating and marketing and following up, and that translates to volume. You can see the results of your work, and it's very gratifying.
Absolutely. I can completely relate to that. Now, what were your expectations about the industry and the role of a real estate assistant before you got into real estate?
That it would be like HGTV. Not really, but I did think I'd be spending more time in houses, talking about staging, all of that kind of surface level stuff, right? Which is why a lot of people get interested in real estate, which is fine, but that is just such a small portion of it. And of course, as an admin, my time is better spent in the office, whether it's just putting out fires or working on the business. And that's where I shine anyway. Um, I also thought it was going to be impossibly hard, especially because I was joining an agent who was producing a ton. And I came in not knowing a whole lot. My boss really did take a risk. I mean, she picked me and my experience for a reason, but it was one of the scariest challenges, intensified by the fact that it was also a career change for me. So there were a lot of unknowns, but I followed my gut and took the leap, and I'm glad that I did.
And what were those first few weeks on the job like?
Well, it was hard, but not nearly as hard as I thought it would be. And luckily, I had a boss who was really invested in my training and coaching. She gave me time, and that was crucial to my success ultimately. Um, we had one-on-one coaching with Kathleen Metcalf, and we were with Keller Williams, which has so many classes and resources for learning. It's a big part of their culture. And we took classes like The Perfect Real Estate Assistant with Monica Reynolds, which was several weeks long, in those first few months on the job. So I had a lot of resources. And I think that if anyone isn't getting that from their boss or team and feels like they need it, it's not a failure. If you need that, you should ask for whatever resources you feel you need to be successful. And if someone's unwilling to give that, I'd be wary of how that relationship is going to go, because ultimately your success is theirs multiplied. I mean, if they're invested in you, they're going to see that return on the investment. So I was lucky that I really had time to get into the role, feel around, and it was amazing.
And how long do you feel that it took you to really get the hang of things and feel like you were in control of the office? Or do you still working on it?
Yeah, the honest answer would be the better part of a year, which sounds scary and like, really, what were you doing wrong? But from conversations with other admins in this industry, I found that that's really not uncommon. Um, there are a lot of moving parts, and as an admin, you could be doing anything from marketing to listing management to um, managing all the tools and software, and creating flyers and scheduling vendors. I mean, it's so much. And um, you know even when you think that you've got something down, you're learning something else new. There's a new situation that crops up that you've never run into before, or you need to get a listing live yesterday, and so you feel like you're skipping steps. And that's hard to get used to, especially since we admins tend to be pretty methodical, organized people. We don't like chaos. It's our job to control chaos. But I finally did, I would say, I want to say maybe 8 or 9 months in, finally felt like, oh wow, okay, we have the same number of listings this month as we did last month, and yet I'm not panicking. And that's because over time I built up some systems that helped us not drop any balls, and that's what we're here for.
Perfect. Talk a little bit about the human component. I think admins who come in from a more corporate environment can feel a little shell-shocked walking into some real estate offices or working for certain bosses or dealing with high-profile, very demanding clients. Talk about your experience just dealing with the industry, the people that you work with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Yeah, it can be a very different experience if you are used to structure and HR departments and just a few more people around you, a little more bureaucracy maybe. It can feel a little bit like you're in the beginning stages of a very small startup, when it's just maybe you and your agent. Maybe your agent has never had a full-time assistant before. So they're learning right alongside with you on how am I responsible now for this person? What do they need from me? So that's something that you might end up learning alongside your lead agent. As far as the people, I think clients, they're all going to be different. You see it all. I mean, every kind of personality. You're seeing people in their most vulnerable moments, their most stressful moments. You're not always seeing the best side of people. But what's great is that you're meeting all kinds of different people and you are helping them. And even, in a stressful transaction, I mean, every client I can think of, has walked away just feeling grateful. And, that's super gratifying to hear from a client, like, thank you for that. And we really weren't sure that was going to work out, but we should have trusted you. Everything turned out the way they'd hoped. So, and to be able to celebrate those kinds of wins with your team, I think it's really important to stop and acknowledge those little victories or big victories, because it is kind of never ending. And I think part of what's cool about our role is that it is our job to sort of foster a team culture and stop for a second and be like, hey, we reached our goal, or we got this great review from this client. Isn't that awesome? Because that's what we're doing it for. It's a big part of it is about relationships.
Mm-hmm. And I think you touched on something really key. On top of all of your other job duties as a real estate assistant, you're part cheerleader for your agent. They have to go out and get rejected, and they're slinging mud sometimes, and they need someone in their corner. And a really good assistants do exactly what you said. They pay attention to the wins, and they take the time to celebrate them, and they help kind of get their agent out of the weeds every once in a while, so they can step back and see that they're doing good. Everything's good. We're growing. Yay.
Totally.
Go make some more calls. You're doing good. And I think that also touches on one of the other things that's really unique about this job is, yes, your title is assistant, but in so many ways you're a manager, sometimes
Yes.
more than your boss. And it's a unique relationship. Talk about how you manage up and how you sort of keep everybody on track on the team when you have your manager hat on.
Sure. Yeah, that is a constant challenge. Often your agents are going to be those high D personalities if you've done the disc profile, and it's squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. There's always the phone buzzing or the email going off, and so it is, again, part of our job to kind of manage that. One thing that a few months in I finally learned I needed to do was tell my boss, I'm in control of your schedule. Don't make appointments without consulting me. In fact, just hand it off, especially if you're on the phone with somebody who's demanding a lot of your time and resources, who is maybe not a priority. So I gave her a script. Just tell them, my assistant Cassie manages my schedule. Can you email her and she'll work it out? And then that way she's passing them off, but in a way that makes them feel taken care of. And then I, knowing, how I'm trying to craft her schedule and her day, can fit them in where they need to go. But things like that, making sure your agents are logging into your CRM. We use Brivity, which is our CRM, and it's also where we do transaction management. So we manage our listings in there too. So reminding our agents daily, hey, have you logged in today? You've got these 5 outstanding tasks. Those need to get done, or, I can check those boxes for you, but you need to communicate with me. Did you do your Avid yet? And then team meetings. We have team meetings weekly with all 5 of us now, and we have a lot of fun. I mean, it's a great team with great people, and we can go off on tangents sometimes. We'll get way off topic, like, how did that happen? And I let it happen because, again, that's part of just getting to know your team and enjoying working with them. But then it's my job to then rein it in. Okay, guys, back to what we were just talking about. Which when you're first starting out, you're just not going to feel comfortable doing that. You're like, who am I to say? I have no idea this is my boss. How can I tell my boss you shouldn't be spending time on this right now? But a big part of that is building trust. If you're building trust with your agent, you're going to get to a place where you feel confident saying, hey, back on task.
And I can't tell you how many clients call me, and as they're describing their ideal assistant, they just stop and they say, I just want someone to tell me what to do. I just want to come in to the office in the morning and have someone tell me what I'm supposed to do today.
Yes.
And that's not typical in a lot of general assistant manager relationships. And so I think it's so great to hear you talk about how you evolved into that role where you're able to say, no, you need to do this, or no, I've got this, because that's really what they need and really what they want. And then you're right, it is a process, and some agents let go easier than others. So
Yes.
obviously you have to know your agent. So what parts of your job did you find to be the most difficult during, let's say, your first 6 months on the job?
So after, all those early weeks of training and just kind of going through processes multiple times with Carrie, my boss, and luckily, I did have the opportunity to do those things a few times with her, whether it was, entering a listing into the MLS or whatever it may be. She recognized that, it was probably going to take some repetition before I got it. But so there was just so much to learn that, yeah, in the early days, it was overwhelming. I was taking in a lot of new information, and I wrote down so many notes that it was hard to create order out of it at first. And there was some trial and error with deciding on which tools I was going to use in my day to day to help keep me organized. But that's part of the process. And accepting that things would always be changing or evolving was maybe the biggest mental hurdle for me. But then I compared it to writing and how you're always editing and rewriting and polishing. And that's something you have to get comfortable with in this job. Um, for example, one of my ongoing projects is maintaining our team's playbook or policy manual, but we like to call it playbook because that's more fun. And that lives in Google Drive. So I'm constantly adding to it, moving things around, editing it. And I enjoy that process now rather than fight it, because I can see that small improvements are being made daily. And that once you get the basics down, once you have that core, this needs to get done in this certain order, then you can add creativity. Then you can add your team's flair to things. But so I think to get out of that mindset of, okay, I'm going to make this thing and then it's going to be done and static and it's going to be the same way forever. That's just not how it's going to work. And then once you're in the role for about 3 months, 90 days, that's when you'd think, starting a new job, that you'd finally have things down. But in fact, it's often when you start making frustrating mistakes doing things that you've done before, but you still haven't mastered. And that's because that's generally when, you're given more responsibility, more agency to do your job on your own. So for me, the biggest challenge, a few months into it, was the listing process, which I am still fine tuning, but because there's so many moving parts. And so for a brief time, I felt like I just kept dropping balls. I mean, nothing, luckily no costly mistakes or anything, but I was lucky to have a boss who flat out gave me permission to make mistakes, and I took her up on that a few times, and I improved a little bit every time. But the beauty is that once your systems start becoming so automated, it frees up your time to work on other things. And in the early days, you think there isn't possibly enough time to do everything that needs to get done, but there is. You get there. It just sometimes takes longer than you expect it will.
Absolutely. And now that you're about a year in, what do you love about your job?
I love my team, for one. I love getting our team together, our weekly team meetings. It's Monday morning. Well, it's at 11:30. We've got people coming from a lot of different places, but it's a good time. It gives me my mornings to check in, catch up from over the weekend, and so I always try to make our team meetings valuable. I want everyone to leave feeling like it was time well spent, that they had some good takeaways. And that includes learning about each other. We like to do, icebreakers, things like, talking about our love languages and how that can apply to the workplace. And it turns out, I'm a big words of affirmation person. My boss, she brings in food all the time, and I am always happy to help her eat it. And we talk about that, the things that kind of make us feel appreciated, or like we're doing a good job. And I also really now love our systems. Again, we use Brivity for transaction management, and it was a long process, kind of getting that very, very long checklist of things that need to get done perfect. The way it's set up in Brivity is that you can make certain tasks contingent upon another being completed. And so that was like this weird, huge puzzle to put together that I did not have to create from scratch, because again, there are so many other people in this role. There are amazing resources available to us. There's no reason you should be creating anything from scratch. But so I had that good kind of baseline to build off of. And I do really enjoy just making the process that much better. I'm at the point now where the part of the checklist that I'm working on getting just perfect is the client communication and follow-up and check-ins throughout the listing and contract to close process, to make them feel like, wow, this team's really got me taken care of. They're answering questions before I've even asked them. And I know that I've got a team of people I can go to if I do have questions. So that's something that's been really satisfying, to improve that process and make people feel like they're taken care of. Because once you have, 5 or more listings, that's when communication just drops off, where you're forgetting to check in. And so we're making it so that even if we have 20 listings, no one will feel forgotten. So I love doing that.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you're really excited about getting all of that nailed down, which is fantastic. What advice would you give to job seekers who are thinking that they want to become real estate assistants?
I would say give yourself time. Go into it being a willing learner. Even if you have other similar experience in whether in real estate or as an executive assistant elsewhere, approach it with the attitude of, I'm going to come here and learn something amazing, and take ownership of your role, even when you don't have it all figured out, because you never quite will. I mean, agents will tell you that all the time. You're never going to feel 100% just like, I know everything, and you shouldn't. But so don't wait for that to come before you really take ownership of your role. Your boss will appreciate and hopefully recognize that you're doing that. Even if you don't, get it quite right on the first try, just showing that you're passionate will go a long way. And before I started in my job, I did a lot of sleuthing around online, just trying to get a feel for what an executive assistant does. And there are a lot of resources available to us. And if you're listening to this interview, reading this blog, you already know that R.E.A has a lot of resources available. And there are other blogs like the Assistant Files, Facebook groups like the Executive Assistant Mastermind group. I scoured through those sites and realized that there's a whole community of ops people who are sharing knowledge and ideas and support. And it took me a long time to internalize this despite all my research. But again, you don't have to recreate the wheel on this job. There are so many people who have done what you're doing, and they're all online giving it away. So use what's available to you and join and participate in that community, because it's pretty cool to see what's out there.
Thank you so much, Cassie. It was so great to talk to you, and this was an incredibly helpful interview. I think both for agents who are thinking about hiring and need to understand what their assistant is going to go through during their first year on the job, and also for assistants who are looking for some encouragement as they explore this as a career option. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. We post new videos weekly, all focused on fostering careers in real estate and growing world-class real estate teams.